Lorenzo used to work as a gardener in a convent, pretending to be deaf and mute. One day, after finishing his work, he was in his room humming to himself when suddenly a nun came in with food for him. She didn't tell him her name, and standing close to him, she covered his eyes with a cloth. Lorenzo stayed silent, though deep down, this was exactly what he wanted, as he wished to have affairs with women, including nuns. The nun then kissed him and left. Lorenzo was a romantic kind of man who wanted to have affairs with all kinds of women. Because of this, one night he was running away while many soldiers chased him. The reason was that he had been caught with the king's wife. The king's name was Gerbino, and he himself was also chasing Lorenzo to capture and punish him. However, Lorenzo had once been a soldier too. While escaping, he killed 2 of the king's soldiers and fled. The remaining soldiers continued chasing him. By morning, Lorenzo was exhausted from running. One of his friends learned that he was in trouble, so early in the morning, he arrived with a horse to help him. Seeing his friend, Lorenzo felt relieved. He took the horse, thanked his friend, and rode away. On the other side, inside a church, a thief named Justin worked as a painter. He had come there to steal. When he found out that the church's father had died, he took advantage of the situation. He went to the father's room, stole valuables, and then put on the father's clothes, disguising himself as the priest and making the most of the opportunity. In the same church lived a princess named Penelope. Her parents had recently passed away, leaving her completely alone. She was grieving and missing them deeply. At that time, King Gerbino arrived. He was already obsessed with her, and seeing her, he said that she shouldn't worry because he would take care of her. Penelope didn't like his words and tried to leave. As she walked away, Gerbino said that her father owed him a large debt which had not been repaid, and before dying, he had promised that his daughter would marry him. Hearing this, Penelope replied that her father had actually chosen a groom for her, Prince of Russia Alejandro, and that she had already invited him to come within a week for their wedding. Gerbino assumed that she was refusing him out of fear of Prince Alejandro, so he confidently said that she need not worry about the prince because he would handle everything. The princess knew that Gerbino was a wicked man. She also knew that if she refused him, he might throw her out of the palace, and she had nowhere else to go. So she agreed to his demand, though she had no love for him. She stayed silent as Gerbino held her hands and kissed them. Meanwhile, Lorenzo had fled far away. At night, he met a man who was pushing a small cart carrying an old, sick man. Lorenzo stopped and asked him for directions. The man understood that Lorenzo was probably running from some crime. To help him, he said that a village lay a short distance away, where there was a convent. Lorenzo asked what he would do there. The man explained that the convent needed a gardener, and the sick man used to work there. Now that he was ill, Lorenzo could take his place, but only if he pretended to be deaf and mute, since that was a requirement for the job. As they were talking, the king's soldiers arrived in the area while searching for Lorenzo. Seeing them, Lorenzo quickly ran away. Further ahead, Lorenzo found no place to hide. As he kept running, he saw some thick trees. That was his only option. He quickly climbed one and clung to a branch to hide. The soldiers chasing him assumed that he had gone further ahead, so they continued running past him. Once they were gone, Lorenzo noticed that the branch he was standing on was about to break. Before he could react, it snapped, and he fell to the ground, unconscious. After some time, when Lorenzo regained consciousness, he found a few beautiful nuns standing near him. He immediately pretended to still be unconscious. The nuns carried him to their convent, but even there Lorenzo continued his act. 2 nuns stayed beside him, waiting for him to wake up. They thought he might be injured from falling off a tree, and considered removing his clothes to check his wounds. The nuns had never seen such a handsome man before, which made them even more eager to revive him. Meanwhile, Lorenzo kept his eyes closed, listening to their conversation, though he didn't have the courage to get up and send them away. One of the nuns was about to kiss his cheek when their senior arrived. Seeing her, both nuns quickly stood up straight in fear. Lorenzo quietly listened to the 3 of them talk. The 2 nuns told their senior mother that the man was alive and that he might be deaf and mute. They even said that perhaps God had sent him to them. Hearing this pleased the mother even more. She approached Lorenzo and asked if he could hear or speak. Lorenzo, already prepared for this, gestured to show that he could neither hear nor talk. The mother was happy to confirm that he was deaf and mute, and he was appointed there as a gardener. On her orders, a tub was filled with water for his bath, and soon Lorenzo was being bathed, with several nuns gathering around to help. Meanwhile, Princess Penelope was troubled by Gerbino. In the same palace where she lived, her 2 friends, Elisa and Simona, also stayed. She shared how distressed she was because Gerbino wanted to marry her, but she didn't want to marry him. She told them that her marriage had already been arranged with the Prince of Russia, Alejandro. Her friends reassured her not to worry. They promised to make arrangements to protect her and take her somewhere safe, away from Gerbino. While they were still talking, Gerbino suddenly arrived and shouted loudly, asking what was going on and ordering everyone to go back to their homes. In truth, he wanted to drive away Penelope's friends and their boyfriends. When they didn't leave, Gerbino began threatening the men with his sword, escalating the situation. Hearing the commotion, Justin, who was upstairs, called out that no one had the right to raise their voice in the church. He declared himself the father of the church and ordered everyone to leave immediately. Hearing Father Justin, Gerbino became angry. As Justin approached, Gerbino even pointed his sword at him. Justin warned him that if even a drop of blood was spilled there, the consequences would be severe. Hearing this, Gerbino decided to leave, but before going, he warned that although he was leaving alone today because of Father Justin, next time he wouldn't come alone. After he left, Penelope's friends decided to secretly take her to a convent to keep her safe from Gerbino until the prince arrived. They knew that since Gerbino was a king, the convent would be the safest place to hide. They also took Father Justin with them so that he could officiate Penelope's marriage when the time came. That same evening, Penelope was taken by carriage to the convent, coincidentally, the same one where Lorenzo lived. After she arrived, two nuns dressed her in clothes like theirs. At that moment, Penelope noticed Lorenzo and asked who he was. The nuns told her that God had sent him to them from heaven, that he was a good man, and that he was deaf and mute. Hearing this, Penelope felt sympathy for him. Meanwhile, Lorenzo was busy with his work when a nun came and called him. As he approached her, she led him into the bushes. On the other side, Prince Alejandro of Russia arrived at Penelope's palace with his soldiers, where Gerbino was already present. After meeting him, Alejandro introduced himself as Penelope's future husband. He said he had brought gifts for him and his wife, and then asked where Penelope was, as he had come to marry her. In fact, the prince thought that Gerbino was Penelope's father. Hearing the prince, Gerbino said that he himself was Penelope's future husband and ordered him to leave, claiming that he would be the one to marry her. Hearing this, Alejandro mocked Gerbino along with his soldiers and replied arrogantly that he hadn't traveled so far just to hear that someone else would marry his princess. He declared that he alone would marry her. The prince then said he wanted to hear the truth directly from Penelope herself, whom she was willing to marry. After leaving the palace, Alejandro met one of Penelope's trusted men, who handed him something and said that everything was written inside it. It explained that their wedding would take place at another location, and that for now, the princess was hiding in a convent in a nearby village, waiting for him. Upon learning this, the prince immediately set off to meet her. Meanwhile, inside the convent, two nuns brought food for Lorenzo and told him that they knew he couldn't speak or hear, and that it must be God's will that he had come there to work. They said they wanted to talk to him privately. Lorenzo could hear everything, but he continued pretending to be deaf and mute, silently observing their behavior. On the other hand, Elisa and Simona were heading toward the convent to arrange Penelope's marriage, while their boyfriends followed behind on foot. The path went through a forest. As their carriage moved ahead, two girls from another direction whistled and signaled to them. One of the boys went over to them, and the girls asked for help. Hearing this, both boys followed them. The girls led them to a stable full of cows and told them they had called them there to milk the cows. The boys admitted they didn't know how to do it, so the girls began teaching them. Soon, the boys started milking the cows. At that moment, Simona arrived there while searching for them. Seeing her boyfriend, she became angry. The poor boys hadn't even properly finished drinking the milk before Simona scolded them and dragged them away. Meanwhile, inside the convent, Lorenzo was being treated very well. First, he was bathed, while Penelope stood nearby, watching and growing irritated at the attention he was receiving. After his bath, Lorenzo was taken to the mother's room for dinner. By then, Penelope had begun to understand what was happening there. She herself had started developing feelings for Lorenzo, which made her even more upset. On the other side, Penelope's friends grew tired while traveling and stopped to rest. After eating something, Justin told him to go ahead, saying he would take a shortcut through the forest and reach the convent quickly. He said they couldn't all travel together, and then he left. Back at the convent, Lorenzo was tired after working in the garden and returned to his room to rest. While resting, he slowly began humming. Just then, Penelope came in with food and overheard his voice, but she pretended not to notice. Lorenzo, meanwhile, had realized that each day he was expected to please one of the nuns. Thinking the same for that day, he didn't say anything to Penelope and instead reached to remove the cloth covering her face. But she stopped him, tied a cloth over his eyes, and said that she saw him every day and had fallen in love with him, not like the other nuns, but in a completely different way. After saying this, she kissed him gently and left. Lorenzo was left wondering which nun had fallen in love with him, but deep down, he too began to fall for her. Only one day remained for the week to be completed. Penelope's friends had now reached very close to the convent in their horse carriage. One of their boyfriends was still walking on foot, upset with his girlfriend. Simona told the carriage driver to meet them at the convent and went into the jungle to calm her boyfriend. He was still angry, so Simona started kissing him, but soon his energy ran out, which made Simona angry at him. Meanwhile, in the convent, as the week came to an end, Penelope was about to leave for the palace where she was supposed to marry the prince. But first, she went to the mother and told her everything, that Lorenzo was not deaf and mute, because the previous day she had heard him singing in the gardener's house. This made the mother worried, thinking that he would expose everything. To check, she went to Lorenzo. At that moment, Lorenzo was sleeping in his room. The mother suddenly shouted loudly into his ears, and Lorenzo woke up in fear and screamed, revealing his secret. After this, the mother pushed him out of the convent. A short while later, a carriage from the palace arrived for Penelope. Lorenzo was sitting nearby. As Penelope passed by him, Lorenzo saw her and asked where she was going and whether she could take him along. In fact, Lorenzo recognized Penelope as a princess because he was from the same city, but he still didn't know that she had been living there disguised as a nun. Now Penelope wanted to take Lorenzo with her after getting him out of the convent, and that is exactly what happened. She took him along and left. Meanwhile, the prince was coming through the forest with his soldiers, searching for Penelope. On the way, Gerbino's soldiers surrounded them and killed all of his soldiers with arrows. Somehow, the prince managed to escape and ran far away, eventually stopping near a pond. Nearby, Penelope's friends were also somewhere in the area. At the pond, Penelope's friend Elisa was bathing. While drinking water, the prince saw her and asked who she was. Elisa replied that she was a bride waiting for her groom. The prince said that he had come to marry Princess Penelope, that he had never seen her, but loved her deeply and would only marry her. Hearing this, Elisa said that she herself was Penelope and that he was looking for her. She then went close to the prince and embraced him. The prince believed her, and the two began kissing and lost themselves in the moment. In the next scene, Penelope arrived at the palace with Lorenzo. Lorenzo congratulated her on her upcoming marriage and started to leave, but Penelope told him that he could stay there until the wedding, as no one had arrived at the palace yet. He agreed. Inside the palace, the two talked with each other, and during their conversation, Penelope asked Lorenzo about marriage. He said that he would marry only the girl who had kissed him for the first time. She had come to him like a nun, but he had not seen her face. Still, no matter what, he would marry only her because he loved her. Hearing this made Penelope even happier because she knew that she herself was the one who had kissed him, and she too had fallen in love with him. While talking, they went into the garden. Penelope asked how he would recognize her, since she had only kissed him once. Lorenzo said he believed that fate would one day bring her in front of him. After that, Penelope moved closer to him and said that he should close his eyes and try kissing her. Perhaps he would feel the same sensation he had felt with that girl. She wanted to remind him that she herself was the one who had kissed him. But just as the two were about to kiss, Gerbino arrived there with his men. Seeing him, Penelope got scared and told Lorenzo to leave, but Lorenzo already knew Gerbino and stepped forward to face him. A fight broke out between them. However, Gerbino began to overpower Lorenzo and was about to kill him when Penelope stepped in and said that if he killed Lorenzo, she would never marry him. Hearing this, Lorenzo was shocked and asked if she was really going to marry this old man and whether he was her prince. Penelope couldn't say anything. After that, Gerbino had Lorenzo taken away and locked in a prison. The next day, Penelope and Gerbino were talking, and Penelope said that if he wanted to marry her, he would have to release Lorenzo. Gerbino refused, but she threatened that if Lorenzo wasn't freed, she would jump into a well and kill herself. This forced Gerbino to agree, and he ordered Lorenzo to be released. Meanwhile, Justin, disguised as a father, arrived at the palace to carry out the wedding according to the plan. Before the ceremony, the bride and groom had to confess. During this, Penelope told the father that the marriage was being forced on her and that she loved Lorenzo and wanted to marry him. She gave the father some gold coins and made a plan. She said Lorenzo didn't know that she was the one he loved, but she was sure he would come to save her again. She also said the prince would arrive soon, so somehow the wedding should be delayed until then. On the other side, two of Gerbino's men were taking Lorenzo through the forest after releasing him from prison. They planned to kill him from behind at a certain spot, but before they could, Lorenzo knocked both of them unconscious with punches. At that moment, the prince arrived there on horseback and asked Lorenzo for directions to the princess's palace. Lorenzo asked why he was looking for the palace, and the prince replied that he wanted to free Penelope from Gerbino. When Lorenzo asked who he was, the prince revealed that he was Penelope's future husband and then rode off. Hearing this, Lorenzo was shocked. He picked up a sword and followed him. At the palace, Penelope and Gerbino's wedding had already begun, and Justin, still disguised as the father, was about to conduct the ceremony. Justin tried to delay the wedding by telling Gerbino to freshen up first. Gerbino quickly washed his face and returned, ready for the ceremony. But Justin could not delay much longer. Just then, the prince arrived and started shooting at Gerbino's men. At the same time, Lorenzo also arrived and began fighting and killing Gerbino's soldiers. Gerbino declared that Lorenzo was his prey and that he alone would kill him. Then a fight started between the prince and Gerbino. Lorenzo stepped forward, stopped the prince, and challenged Gerbino himself. This led to the final battle between Lorenzo and Gerbino. After a long and intense fight, Lorenzo finally killed Gerbino and threw him into a well where he died. After that, the prince thanked Lorenzo for his help and the two became friends. Then Penelope arrived. The prince went to her and said that he had come to marry her, but Penelope replied that she could not marry him because she loved someone else. When she removed the cloth from her face, the prince realized she was not his Penelope. At that moment, Penelope's friend Elisa arrived, and the prince happily united with her. Soon after, Simona also arrived with her boyfriend and told Penelope that Lorenzo was leaving the palace. Penelope immediately ran to him, called out to him, and said, "I love you." Lorenzo replied that he didn't love her, but loved the nun from the convent. Then Penelope asked him to close his eyes and kissed him. Lorenzo instantly understood that she was the one he loved. In the end, Lorenzo and Penelope became one, and the story concludes.